Start. The conversion of Aurelian McGoggin. This is not a tale exactly, this is a tract, and I am immensely proud of it. Making a tract is a feat. Every man is entitled to his own religious opinions, but no man, least of all a junior, has a right to thrust these down any other man's throats. The government sends out weird civilians now and again, but McGoggin was the queerest exported for a long time. He was clever, brilliantly clever, but his cleverness worked the wrong way. Instead of keeping to the study of the vernaculars, he had read some books written by a man called Comte, and I think by a man called Comte, I think, and a man called Spencer. You will find these books in the library. They deal with people's insides from the point of view of men who have no stomach. There was no order against his reading them, but his mama should have smacked him. They fermented in his head, and he came out to India with a rarefied religion over and above his work. It was not much of a creed. It only proved that men had no souls, and there was no God and no hereafter, and that you must worry along somehow for the good of humanity. One of his minor tenets seemed to be that the one thing more sinful than giving an order was obeying it. At least that was what McGoggin said. But I suspect he had misread his books. I do not say a word against his creed. It was made up in town, where there is nothing but machinery and asphalt and building, all shut in by the fog. Naturally, a man grows to think that there is no one higher than himself, and that the Metropolitan Board of Works made everything. But in India, where you really see humanity, raw, brown, naked humanity, with nothing between it and the blazing sky, and only the used up, overhandled earth underfloor, the notion somehow dies away, and most folk come back to simpler theories. Life in India is not long enough to waste in proving that there is no one in particular at the head of affairs. For this reason, the deputy is above the assistant, the commissioner above the deputy, the lieutenant governor is above the commissioner, and the viceroy is above all the four, under the orders of the Secretary of State, who is responsible to the Empress. If the Empress be not responsible to her maker, if there is no maker for her to be responsible to, the entire system of her administration must be wrong, which is manifestly impossible. At home, men are to be excused. They were stalled up a good deal and get intellectually beany. When you take a gross when you take a gross beany horse to exercise, he slavers and slobbers over the bit till you can't see the horse. But the bit is there and just the same. Bit is there just the same. Men do not get beany in India. The climate and the work are against playing bricks with birds. If McGoggin had kept his creed, with the capitals, letters, and the endings in ism to himself. No one would have cared. But his grandfathers on both sides had been Wesleyan preachers, and the preaching strain came out in his mind. He wanted everyone at the club to see that they had no souls too, and to help him to eliminate his creator. As a good many men told him, he undoubtedly had no soul because he was so young. But it did not follow that his seniors were equally undeveloped, and whether there was another world or not, a man still wanted to read his papers in this world. But that is not the point. That is not the point. Aurelian used to say. Then men threw sofa cushions at him and told him to go to any particular place he might believe in. They christened him the Blastodum, and he said he came from a family of that name somewhere in the prehistoric ages, and by insult and laughter strove to choke him dumb, for he was an unmitigated nuisance at the club, besides being an offense to the older men. His deputy commissioner, who was working on the frontier when Aurelian was rolling on a bed quilt, told him that for a clever boy, Aurelian was a very big idiot. And if he had gone on with his work, he would have been caught up in the secretariat in a few years. He was of the type that goes there all head, no physic, and 100 theories. Not a soul was interested in McGaugin's soul. He might have had two or more, or somebody else's. His business was to obey orders and keep abreast of his files instead of devastating the club with his isms, the theories. He worked brilliantly, but he could not accept any order without trying to better it. That was the fault of his creed. It made men too responsible and left too much to their honor. You can sometimes ride the old horse in a halter, but never a colt. McGaugin took more trouble over his cases than any of the men in his year. He may have fancied that 30-page judgments on 50 rupees cases, both sides perjured to the gullet, advanced the cause of humanity. At any rate, he worked too much and worried and fretted over the rebukes he received. And lectured away on his ridiculous creed out of office, till the doctor had to warn him that he was overdoing it. No man can toil 18 hours, 18 annas in the rupee. No man can toil 18 annas in the rupee in June without suffering. But McGaugin, 18 annas in the rupees, the rupee has got only 16 annas, so he's doing more than 100%. That is what it means. No man can work more than 18 annas in a rupee in June without suffering. But McGaugin was still intellectually beanie and proud of himself and his powers, and he would take no hint. He worked 9 hours a day steadily. Very well, said the doctor. You will break down because you are over-engined for your ears. McGoggin was a little man. One day, the collapse came, in as dramatically as if it had been meant to embellish a tract. It was just before the rains. We were sitting in the veranda in the dead, hot, close air, gasping and praying that the black blue clouds would let down and bring the cool rain. Very, very far away, there was a faint whisper, which was the roar of the rains breaking over the river. One of the men heard it, got out of his chair and listened and said, naturally enough, thank God. Then the blastrodome turned in his place and said, why, I assure you it's only the result of perfectly natural causes, atmospheric phenomena of the simplest kind. Why you should therefore return thanks to a being who never did exist, who is only a figment. Blastrodome granted the man in the next chair dry up. Blastrodome granted the man in the next chair dry up and throw me over the pioneer as the newspaper. We know all about your figments. The blastrodome reached out to the table, took up one paper, and jumped as if something had stung him. Then he handed the paper. As I was saying, he went on slowly and with an effort. Due to perfectly natural causes, I mean, I blasted them. You have given me the Calcutta Mercantile Advertiser. The dust got up in little holes while the tree tops rocked and all the kites whistled. But no one was looking at the coming of the rains. We were all staring at the blastrodome, who had risen from his chair and was fighting with his speech. Then he said, until still more slowly, perfectly conceivable dictionary, red oak, amenable, cause, retaining, shuttlecock, alone. Blastodoms is drunk, said one man. But the blastrodom was not drunk. He looked at us in a dazed sort of way and began motioning with his hands in the half light as the clouds closed overhead. Then, with a scream, what is it? Can't reserve attainable, market obscure, but speech seemed to freeze in him. And just as the lightning shot two tongues that cut the whole sky into three pieces, and the rain fell in quivering sheets, the blastrodon was struck dumb. He stood pawing and thumping like a hard-held horse, and his eyes were full of terror. The doctor came over in 3 minutes and heard the story. It is aphasia, said the doctor. Take him to his rooms. I knew the smash would come. We carried the blastrodom across in the pouring rain to his quarters, and the doctor gave him bromide of potassium to make him sleep. Then the doctor came back to us and told us that aphasia was like all the arrears of Punjab head falling in a lump, and that only once before, in the case of a sepoy, had he met with so complete a case. I have seen mild aphasia in an overworked man. But this sudden dumbness was uncanny, though, as the Blastodon himself might have said, due to perfectly natural causes. He'll have to take leave after this, said the doctor. He won't be fit for work for another 3 months. No, it isn't insanity or anything like that. It's only complete loss of control over the speech and memory. I fancy it will keep the Blastodon quiet though. 2 days later, the Blastodon found his tongue again. The first question he asked was, "What was it?" The doctor enlightened him. "But I can't understand it," said the Blastodon. "I'm quite sane, but I can't be sure of my mind. It seems my own memory. Can I go up to the hills for 3 months?" said the doctor, "and don't think about it." "But I can't understand it," replied the Blastodon. "It was my own mind and memory." "I can't help it," said the doctor. "There are a good many things you can't understand, and by the time you have put in any length of service, you'll know exactly how much a man dare call his own in this world." The stroke cowed the Blastodon. He could not understand it. He went into the hills in fear and trembling, wondering whether he would be permitted to reach the end of any sentence he began. This gave him a wholesome feeling of mistrust. The legitimate explanation that he had been overworking himself failed to satisfy him. Something had wiped his lips of speech, as if another wipes the milky lips of her child, as a mother wipes the milky lips of her child. And he was afraid, horribly afraid. So the club had rest when he returned. And if ever you come across Aurelian McGoggin laying down the law on things human, he doesn't seem to know as much as he used to about things divine. Put your forefinger to your lip for a moment and see what happens. Don't blame me if he throws a glass at your head. Oh God, it's not a very nice, a very interesting story. This McGoggin had overread everything and he was highly pompous and he wanted to preach to everybody. Then suddenly he had a stroke. So that is what has happened. I finished. Thank you.